Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Lucy Naidanova from the African Development Bank, from the Climate Change and Green Growth Department. Welcome here today to this quite unique event where we are going to discuss the role of non-market approaches under Article 6.8 for the implementation of nationally determined contributions. Many people are wondering, what are non-market approaches? After a decade of talking about them, I can summarize as all structured forms of international cooperation that are not carbon markets. So everything that is not carbon markets, but it is international cooperation, and it uses some kind of structured approach, could potentially qualify as non-markets. So we have here with us today two presenters of organizations that are working on developing non-market approaches. We have Gareth Phillips here. Gareth, wave your hand. Gareth Phillips. He's Manager Climate and Environment Finance at the African Development Bank. The African Development Bank is piloting the Adaptation Benefits Mechanism, next to working on many other innovative financing tools and mechanisms. Then we have Ms. Haruna Yoshizawa here from Japan, from the Ministry of of Economy, Trade and Industry, METI. METI has always been working on innovative financing mechanisms and incentives for the private sector. And right now they're developing also a non-market approach, which is called Sustainable Business of Adaptation for Resilient Urban Future. This initiative is abbreviated as SUBARU. Easy to remember? Yes, so she will tell you all about SUBARU. Both approaches were presented at the UNFCCC workshop on Article 6.8 last week on the 12th of November. Mainly parties were present, so this event gives opportunity to various stakeholders to also learn more about these approaches. After the two presentations, we will have a panel discussion. In the panel, we will have Mr. Deo Gabinete from the NDC Partnership, Asian Pacific Office, and we will have Luis Namucho from Mozambique. Mozambique has also experience with another non-market approach whose representatives could not be here today because they left. It's called LOCAL. LOCAL is an approach of the UNCDF, the United Nations Capital Development Fund. So we hope that we will hear also about this approach so that the participants can get a full overview of the most prominent non-market approaches which are being promoted here, next to, of course, the Joint Mitigation and Adaptation Regional Initiative of Bolivia, which was launched yesterday. So, Mr. Gareth, please come to the floor and tell us about the ABM in 5 to 7 minutes. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much indeed. It was great to see such a good audience, the real hardcore left on the last day of the negotiations. My name is Gareth. I manage climate and environmental finance, and we've been working with Lucy's assistance on developing the Adaptation Benefits Mechanism for quite a few years. We're now in the last year of the pilot phase, or about to enter the last year, and we've made very good progress recently here at the COP. You may be aware of the developments under Article 6.8. And for us, this is significant because the Adaptation Benefits Mechanism has now been submitted as a formal instrument under Article 6.8. It's going through a completeness check and a 30-day no objection period, after which it will be recorded on the platform as a formal non-market approach. And that's important because it means we can now reach out to governments and say that we want support to pilot this further and develop it and so on. So we're quite excited about that. Now, briefly, what is the Adaptation Benefits Mechanism? The main problem for adaptation projects is that they have weak or completely absent cash flows. When you think about adaptation projects, it could be building a flood defense to protect a community. It could be putting in potable water or mangroves to protect the coastline and so on. And it's very difficult to get revenues from these kinds of activities. In the developed world, maybe you can charge for water, but in many developing countries, it's difficult to, people don't have money to pay for water. And if you don't give them a clean supply, they'll continue using contaminated supplies or and so on. So, you know, this is a challenge. So the idea behind the Adaptation Benefits Mechanism is to provide a cash flow to projects that don't otherwise have a cash flow. And with a cash flow, you can then access the capital markets and make these projects bankable. Now, what does that mean? When you have a cash flow, you can go and borrow money from a bank or an investor because you're going to have a cash flow to pay them back. If you don't have a cash flow, you can't do that. Then nobody will lend you money. And that's what we mean when we say that adaptation projects are not bankable or they can't access the capital markets. So if we can sign a contract for the sale of adaptation benefits with a credit-worthy off-taker and get a registered project, then you've got the documentation that a bank or a lending agency will consider as collateral to give you a loan. And that's a real breakthrough for adaptation projects because at the moment that's what they don't have. And so you see most adaptation projects are financed as grant, and most grant money is given to governments, and governments are not particularly efficient or effective. They don't like to bring entrepreneurial skills and develop new ideas and so on. So adaptation loses out from all these things. So the ABM, the Adaptation Benefits Mechanism, is a project cycle that you go through. It starts with the development of a methodology which designs or defines what adaptation benefits you're going to deliver. And they are project and context specific. So the adaptation benefits from planting mangroves would be coastal protection. The adaptation benefits from climate resilient agriculture would be households made resilient to climate change. And the adaptation benefits from flood defenses would be communities or households or commercial premises protected from floods. So these are completely different and they're context specific. So we define those in a methodology. We have a baseline. We have to ensure environmental and social impacts are addressed, that there's no maladaptation impacts and so on. So all these things go into the methodology. And once it's approved, you can develop a project design document which goes through a validation process, and that gets registered on the ABM website. And once you've got that registered, you can then go to look for buyers for your adaptation benefits. And if you can sign a purchase agreement, then we can help you mobilize money to implement the project. You do the monitoring and reporting, you have a verification process, and then the issuance of the certified adaptation benefits, which you send to your buyer and they pay you for them. So that's a very quick overview of how the mechanism works. We think that it's really quite innovative because it will provide this access to the capital markets to borrow either debt, or you might even get equity investors who come. The monitoring process will provide credible information on adaptation benefits and the nature of adaptation that is delivered. So we'll see methodologies that will talk about different ways of measuring adaptation, and there will be lots of different ways of doing that. The adaptation benefits will be linked to the global adaptation goals in those 7 categories. So you'll be able to see which parts of the global goal on adaptation you're contributing to. And I will stop there and hope to take further discussion and questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gareth. We will invite you later to join the panel and answer questions. This was a very concise summary of how the adaptation benefits mechanism will work. I would like to invite Ms. Haruna Yoshisawa from the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, METI, to present another non-market approach, the Sustainable Business of Adaptation for Resilient Urban Future Initiative, Subaru.
Thank you for my introduction, Lucy. My name is Haruna Yoshizawa from Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry of Japan, METI. So today I would like to introduce you Japan's non-market approach on adaptation, which is called Subaru Initiative. So Gareth introduced some approach for borrowing money from the banks, but in order to formulate adaptation project, I'm gonna introduce you some steps back. Before formulating the project, we need the matching between the needs and the seeds of adaptation. So Subaru Initiative, Subaru stands for Sustainable Business of Adaptation for a Resilient Urban Future, and it was launched in COP27 in 2022 with the collaboration of UN Habitat Fukuoka office. So as many of you may be aware, UN Habitat promotes resilient cities, and Fukuoka office covers the regional offices for Asia and the Pacific. Asia and the Pacific. So the Fukuoka office covers 17 offices from 17 countries, from Afghanistan, Cambodia, China, and so on. And so the aim of the Subaru Initiative is to improve the resilience of cities in the Asia-Pacific region together with Japanese companies who have the solutions for adaptation. So it formulates public-private partnership projects and focusing on local circumstances and promoting diverse partnerships such as local cities as well as Japanese companies, and as well as also the local companies, and some with the university and the academics as well. And it also enhances involvement of startup companies and SMEs, as in because many of the companies who have the adaptation technologies are SMEs and startups. So the picture shows that we have been collaborating with the UN Habitat since COP27, and we've been engaging at COP. So going further, explaining about the Subaru Initiative activities. So we've been conducting a matching event between the local government of Asia Pacific region and who has the needs for the adaptation, and matching them with the Japanese companies who have the technologies to solve it, potential technologies to solve it. So in 2023, we held this meeting inviting 6 private sector Japanese companies and also 4 local and national government from Asia and Pacific region. In detail, it was from Cambodia, the national government came, and from Nepal, the mayor of Laritopu Metropolitan City came, and also the province of Iloilo from Philippines, and Hoi An City from Vietnam. So we each of these companies and the governments presented their technologies and also their needs in the local circumstances, and they had a discussion afterwards on how to if their seeds and the needs match. And along with the meeting, we also conducted a site visit to one of the Japanese companies called Taiho Kinzoku. So Taiho Kinzoku provides a technology to like a emergency door stop for helping water flooding down to the entrance of the metropolitan entrance, to the subways. So after the matchmaking meeting, it did not stop there, but we also held a demonstration project at the local place and also a workshop along with the demonstration. So in the meeting, the mayor of the Laritopu Metropolitan City from Nepal held very high interest on ecosystem, one of the Japanese company called Ecosystems Technology. And they actually held a demonstration. So first, I'm gonna explain a little further for the ecosystems technology. So the ecosystem has has a their technology contributes to reduce urban flooding and heat island effect, and so they pave the ground with using the recycled roof tiles and bricks, and they smash it and mix them with the concrete and pave it to the ground. So the material has this permeability and water retention. So it contributes to urban flooding and heat island effect. So you can see from the so the Laritopu city introduced us a city-owned park to hold a demonstration project, and like it took only a half day to conduct the pavement, and after 2 or 3 days it dried up. So the deputy mayor of the Laritopu city came to confirm the permeability of the pavement material, and this demonstration project helped promote the technology capabilities of the ecosystem. And afterwards, we held a workshop inviting local government, technical staff, university students majoring urban development, NGO staff, and others. From METI, we introduced some activities of our adaptation business, and from ecosystem, they shared more detailed technical description in their presentation. So yes, so for the matchmaking meeting, we also held it this year in September as well. It was conducted online, but 5 Japanese companies came, and 4 local government as well as local institutions from wind power came in as well. Yes. So I also wanted to introduce you this catalog we've been publishing on Japanese companies of adaptation technologies. So we have 56 examples in this catalog of Japanese companies who introduced their technology in developing countries. So so when we hear the needs from the Asia local governments, we go through this catalog and look for the potential Cs that they can contribute to the needs. So this this catalog we are updating every year. We are adding more and more examples every year, and yes. Maybe I'll stop here.
Thank you, Ms. Haruna. You have heard the description of the Japanese non-market approach, Subaru. So you have now heard 2 presentations on 2 different non-market approaches, one piloted in Africa and another for the Asia-Pacific region. I understood Japan is also interested in expanding activities in Africa. You have seen some examples, and you have heard that Japan has already more than 50 technologies in a catalog, technologies for adaptation, ready to be deployed. May the countries want that. We have here among us also Mr. Omar Saleh, who is a technology provider for adaptation, seeking incentives to engage in adaptation. He will present briefly his technology and explain why a private sector company wants to engage in adaptation and for which cases incentives are needed that are currently not in place. Please, Omar. Omar is half Egyptian, half Dutch. His company is based in the Netherlands and in the United Arab Emirates.
Thank you, Lucy. I like that you always introduced me as half Egyptian. I like that. Proud of that, so yeah. Thank you all for having me here today and for being present. I mean, it's still quite a good audience considering it's the last day. I'm going to present to you today something about what we do as an organization and how this relates to ABM in particular, because that's something Gareth earlier gave a presentation about. First, kind of our background, particularly this product that we offer, which is an innovative mobile flood barrier, something that has gained a lot of traction the last couple of years. We have a lot of reputable clients already, like the World Bank. We work together with the AfDB, some national governments, NGOs. Even the private sector now is coming more in because they have issues with flooding as well. And we have won several awards, such as Most Effective Solution Against Flooding, the International Korea Water Week, Climate Innovation Challenge, and we've also been selected by the UN to scale up our solution out of 200 candidates. So you see that there's more and more traction for this climate adaptive solution. Few highlights and some benefits. So it's a modular mobile flood barrier that you fill with water. It has been developed in the Netherlands. And it has a unique design and material combination. The design is that is a modular system comprising of 2 compartments, each of which has to be filled with water. And that has a stabilizing effect. So it can withstand a lot of pressure from outside. The material itself is also unique and patented, by the way. It's a synthetic rubber called EPDM, but reinforced with a specific foil. So it's very strong, whilst retaining the benefits of EPDM, such as it's UV resistant, ozone resistant, so sunlight doesn't damage it, water doesn't evaporate. All of that has some unique benefits. First of all, you can use it dual purpose, so for flood prevention, but also for water storage. It's highly durable, it has a lifespan of more than 40 years, and it can easily be integrated with other resilient measures. Quick slide about how another key advantage is that it's very easy to use, and that makes the solution highly scalable. We do projects all over the world, whether it's urban areas, rural areas, communities, warm environments. How it works is that it comes in stackable boxes. When you want to deploy a slam dam, you take these boxes to the location, you take the slam dam out, you roll it out, you connect hoses to them, and then you start filling it with water using a pump. That way you can very rapidly build up a barrier. And because it's a modular system, basically you can make it as long as you want. When you want to remove it again, all you have to do is empty the barrier, roll it up, and store it in the crates. And that's a repeating cycle. Now, I mentioned that it can be used in different circumstances. Here you can see that some of the projects we've done in cold environments in Pakistan, urban areas in the Netherlands, urban areas in Fiji, rural area in Uganda, near a port in Iceland. So whether it's cold, warm, concrete ground surface, clay ground surface, it actually works in all these different circumstances, proven to be an effective solution. Now, one case study, something we did in Burundi. How we normally work is we start off with an analysis phase to really understand the flood risk in a certain area. So what are the flood characteristics? What is the flow direction? What is the flood depth? What is the flow velocity? Based on that, we can determine, is slam dam a good solution? Yes and no. If yes, how and where should we deploy the flood barrier? So that's something we did in Burundi. We selected several locations where slam dam could help. We manufactured slam dam, set them to the location, trained the people, and this is a rural community, and we trained them in less than half a day. And they were fully equipped to deploy slam dam independently. And they are deploying now slam dam during the entire rainy season. I think that's March, April, May. To prevent damages to the crops, to the people living behind it. And they've been doing it now for already, I think, 3 years. The rest of the year, they're using it for irrigation purposes. So they harness and they store the water, and that's being used then for irrigation. So they doubled agriculture production in 2022. Now, in relation to ABM, we did a project in Kenya. We selected a location where we would like to implement that ABM project. We did field studies, we did some analysis using software, and we selected a particular location in Kenya where we thought, okay, this is a good location where slam dam could help. Gareth already mentioned in the beginning, when you talk about adaptation, you talk about a baseline situation and a situation with an adaptive solution. So in our case, it's a mobile flood barrier. Now here, it's easily visualized what the difference is. The baseline situation is on the left-hand side. So that's a flood situation without slam dam or without an adaptive solution. The right-hand side, you see the same flood situation, but with slam dam. And you can imagine that the difference between those images, between those situations, these are the benefits. And that's something we want to realize, that's something we want to measure. And we want to assess what we call then the credited adaptation benefits. Quite often with flooding, we're talking about land use protection. Not always, but most of the time you're talking about how many square meters or acres of residential land, agricultural land are you protecting using flood resilient measures. So that's something we did here as well. So we did an ex-ante analysis. We thought, okay, if we deploy slam dam at that location, what are we protecting? How many acres of residential land in this case? If you do that, then you can start calculating what is one credited adaptation benefit worth. So one credited adaptation benefit will be X number of acres of residential land, which has a value of €500 or $500, I don't know. You can imagine then if public or private investors, they want to invest in this or contribute to this project, they could buy these adaptation benefits. You pay X number of amount and you will get adaptation benefits in return. So that is in a nutshell how ABM would work for us, for this particular product. Okay, you know, you have different adaptation solutions, but this is how it worked for us. Last slide. So basically we had, there was a flooding earlier this year because of El Nino. Luckily, I mean, the flooding took place exactly as we analyzed, and the people deployed slam dam exactly as we trained them. So kind of this was a textbook project for us because the benefits were realized, the dam was deployed accordingly, and we were able to protect hundreds of people and many acres of residential land. So I hope that sheds some light on how about our solution, our company, and how this relates to ABM. Feel free to reach out if you have any other questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Amor. Please sit in the panel for in case the audience and us have any questions. Ms. Haruna from the Japanese Ministry for Economy, Trade and Industry, who just presented the non-market approach Subaru, and Mr. Gareth Phillips from the African Development Bank, who presented the Adaptation Benefits Mechanism piloted in Africa. I would also like to call to the panel Mr. Deo Gabinete from the NDC Partnership Support Unit for the Asian Pacific, and also Mr. Luis Namucho, who is Climate Advisor at the Ministry of Land and Environment in Mozambique. And we will start with him because Mr. Namucho and Mozambique, they have experience with the third non-market approach, which is called LOCAL of the United Nations Capital Development Fund. So, Mr. Namucho, would you tell us in few words what is local, how it works, but also explain why a country as Mozambique wants to use non-market approaches, and whether you will mention this in your next NDC and how you want to use them. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Lucy. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me. As has been presented, I'm Luis Nyamusho from Mozambique, one of the most affected countries in the world in terms of climate change impacts. So in our strategy, like the country strategy, adaptation is our priority. So that's why all initiatives that assist on adaptation are welcome. So we receive local from the UNCDF in 2014, the pilot initiative, and we officially started the implementation. It was in the year after, it was in 2015, targeting mostly the semi-arid areas. It was action to combat the impact of drought in those areas, very critical areas. So we start with the 4 districts in one of the critical provinces we call the Gaza province, where we developed the initiatives for water collection, smart agriculture, and also we call it resilient infrastructure linked to drought response. Because of the success of this initiative, we engaged with other partners, we get them involved. We started by the support from the Belgium via European Union, but also we start motivating also other partners also from European Union, like Sweden, Switzerland, Catalonia, which is part of the Spain. The UNCDF as well mobilized the additional resource. So we expanded the action. From that initial province, we're now operating in 7 provinces, covering about 40 districts and implementing about 100 projects from infrastructure construction, like school, resilient schools, especially in the coastal area, where almost every year cyclones hit and those infrastructure were most affected ones. But via local now, we've witnessed a significant response on those infrastructure. We did a significant presentation on how resilient the infrastructure being developed through local, and also the promotion of the livelihood of the local communities. So the major experience we learned from the mechanism itself is the way it is done, because it's participative, it integrates all the means of actions for intervention, and also it's inclusive because it deals with the most vulnerable people. It uses a participatory approach, and also it linked to the government planning and budgeting. So that is the experience which we want to get it as a gained result and include it in our budgeting national procedures. And also we do what we call this the performance based assessment. So every year, those initiatives are assessed. So the district with best performance, they get additional funds from the baselines, while the others with no performance, they stand in the baseline, and also giving them the awareness that they can even get the funds reduction. So that is really dynamic procedures, and it make much more sustainable in terms of fund scarce resource management. It's much better in that way than just allocating the same amount for performant or non-performing project. So we'll stop by here. I can clarify later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. I have one question now for the panelists that I would like you to respond very briefly to, so that we at the end give the word to Mr. Deo Gabinete from the NDC Partnership to explain how the NDC Partnership supports countries who want to engage in non-market approaches and cooperative action on adaptation. So, Mr. Garrett, we understood that the Adaptation Benefits Mechanism is trying to create a revenue stream for adaptation projects that will otherwise not be implemented. What exactly delivers the Adaptation Benefits Mechanism that is so valuable to others that they would be ready to pay for it to create this additional revenue stream? And how does the ABM contribute to the implementation of NDCs?
Thank you very much, Lucy. So it's true at the moment we don't have any demand for these adaptation benefits. We think there are private sector entities who are willing to step up and take measures voluntary through CSR activities, and we also see voluntary emission targets amongst these companies, so we think they could spend money on these kinds of things. But in the medium to long term, we really need governments to require their emitters to contribute towards the cost of adaptation, because at the moment lots of companies and consumers are emitting greenhouse gases, but they're not contributing towards the cost of adaptation. Every ton of CO2 that we emit to the atmosphere has an impact on African countries, on people living in the planet, is damaging the climate, but nobody is paying for those. So whilst we've been relatively successful at internalizing the cost of carbon in our economic activities, we have not internalized the cost of adaptation. So we think governments should step up and say, for every ton of CO2 that you emit, we want you to spend $1, $5, $10 on adaptation. And the Adaptation Benefits Mechanism is therefore a flexibility mechanism. It's an instrument that governments could use to set a target for adaptation. And then they can make their own contributions through the NCQG and so on. And corporates and emitters can also contribute, and we can catch all that information and add it all up and report it as contributions. We think that the NDCs are a great opportunity to list adaptation needs, either in the NDCs or the national adaptation plans, and we'd really like to see specificity here. So, for example, in Mozambique, you have an opportunity to say we have 30,000 farmers in this region who need to transition to climate-resilient agriculture, or they are going to become food insecure by 2030. That is a very clear, specific target where we can say, okay, we can use this mechanism to mobilize money and track the progress towards that goal. And you can think of lots of different goals that can become as specific as that to give guidance as to where money should be directed. Thank you.
Thank you, Gareth. Would you pass the microphone to Ms. Haruna Yoshisawa from METI Japan? Ms. Haruna, we heard that Subaru is providing technology transfer and has a whole catalog of high-edge technological solutions for various adaptation challenges that are ready to be deployed on request of developing countries in the Asia-Pacific region. Would you please explain what makes your approach so unique? What is its unique selling point? How does it create incentives for the private sector to participate in adaptation? Because we all know the private sector is largely missing, and they're those with the solutions. We need to engage them. And also, how does Subaru contribute to the needs and priorities of the host countries? And this is now.
Thank you for your question. So what makes Subaru Initiative unique is that I think it's involving the local governments as well as the SMEs and the startups. So the companies who have the adaptation technologies is mostly SMEs and startups. And as a national government, it's hard for us to reach to, it's easier for us to reach to large companies like a mitigation, energy companies, but it's hard to reach to the SMEs and startups because there's a lot of them. And we know that there's a lot of potentially adaptation technology companies, but it's hard for us. We don't have the network to reach out to them. So for us, we are always keeping an eye out. So if we are trying to, when we have a conversation with industry associations, we always ask for, is there some kind of companies who have the adaptation technologies, and that's how we reach to those kind of companies, and we compile them into one catalog. So I think that's very unique, and since the companies are SMEs and startups, they don't have the network to reach out to the local communities who actually have the adaptation needs. So this Subaru initiative helps them reach out to the actual local communities who have the needs. So that's very unique, I think. And I forgot all your questions, but regarding to the NDCs, so when we search for the needs in the local communities, we look for the information publicized, which is published. So we look for their NDCs and also their NAP, National Adaptation Plan. So if they implicitly some target of adaptation or some technology needs is set on the NAP or the NDC, we are very it's easier for us to reach out to them, like to find out their needs.
Thank you very much. Please pass the microphone to Omar. We understood from Gareth and Ms. Haruna that the governments and international organizations have a very important role to play in developing, de-risking new non-market approaches, and that the private sector, in order to become engaged in adaptation, which is a relatively new area for them, they need some kind of facilitation, some kind of mediation and incentives. Omar, you as private sector representative, please explain. Your technology is perhaps affordable for some, but in which cases do you need incentives, and what do you actually need to deploy your technology more widely to those who need it most? And also touch upon whether, do you read NDCs as private sector representative, or do you expect, do you look at other information? Please go ahead.
Yeah, let me start off with the last one. So, do we need NDCs? I think in general we need to know what the priorities are of a country, whether it's captured in NDCs or other documentation. It's something we do normally. We figure out, okay, where do the priorities lie, which sectors, which locations. We discuss it obviously with local stakeholders, local governments. Based on that, we can shape our proposals, our projects. So I think that's a standard item we do. For us, yes, our solution is affordable. I think in developed countries, probably the government they can afford our solution. However, in Africa, we're here in the African context, the most vulnerable people they cannot afford our solution, if I'm honest. So that's a challenge, because like I showed you the project we did in Burundi. Many communities in Burundi, they're telling me, we need the same. We are at risk of flooding. We have water scarcity. Your solution can help. They cannot afford our solution. That's a challenge because we want to help them. We want to implement projects. So there's a shortage of funding. And we're always on the lookout, how can we access funding? It's difficult. It's not bankable. We cannot go for a loan at the bank. So governments also are short of funding. So we try to look for donor funding, but that's very slow. If you have, probably people here have experience with organizations like GCF or the Adaptation Fund or whatever. It can take years, and the need for these solutions is now. Climate adaptation is needed now. So that's a problem. So I think a solution like ABM or a mechanism like ABM offers a solution for that. And the solution from Subaru as well, obviously. So I think these mechanisms, if we can, really if we have these matured and if they are widely adopted worldwide, that will catalyze climate adaptation, something that is needed not just in Africa, actually not even just in developing countries, also in developed countries. We just saw what happened in Spain. We need it all over the world. We need it now.
Thank you, Omar. Please pass the microphone to Mr. Luis for a very brief answer to the following question. Mr. Luis, you're also a carbon market expert and a RED Plus expert. We heard that Mozambique is engaged in a third non-market approach of the UN Capital Development Fund local, which is aiming to empower local governments to act on adaptation. Strong local governments are very important for enabling the private sector to act in their areas on adaptation. But as a carbon market expert, who also has experience now with non-market approaches, what are the key differences between carbon markets and non-market approaches? And do you see non-market approaches as useful for governments to implement NDCs? Thank you.
Thank you for very deep questions. Actually, if you see even the current negotiation now, we are pushing the compromise in terms of payments. we're now standing about something like 100 billion per year, but now we're saying 1.3 trillion as is written in the agreement. But that man is not coming. So what's a problem right now? If you, as Philip said, you don't have a cash flow, nothing will move, no one will trust you. And if you see, most of the country facing the need of urgent adaptation, most of them, they're poor, they're lack of resource, and they are very vulnerable in terms of risk, climate and social risks. So definitely the mechanism like those ones which doesn't look for immediate trade-off, like pay this and then you gain this, are very much more useful. And we are lucky in Mozambique because we have that experience from Red Plus. We used the non-market approach through FCPF, which was a successful experience. We've received some payment, result-based payment. I think it was one of the world's country receiving that amount from the FCPF. Now the question is, how long is the FCPF going to last? So it seems that the mechanisms that works, they don't last, unfortunately. We have the dedicated grants mechanism, which is another initiative, which is non-market ones. We also trusted there from this Climate International Fund. It was also another success. We engaged the local communities on mean of living small business enterprise. If you go there now in the place we implemented the project, you will see changes. People now are much more motivated, aware about climate change. They are more adaptive to that, and also the contribution to the mitigation. Because you cannot have mitigation without adaptation anywhere. And now we are developing a Red Plus project. Most of them are based on mangrove restorations, which is adaptation because mangrove will work as a barrier for the cyclone and floodings, and then it will generate the carbon. So the question is what Philip's saying. How much are we willing to take from the results from the market, going to the answer, to the no-market? Yeah, that's a big question. But we need to have it very clear that we will not have a market without a non-market approach. Because a non-market approach, they enable the environment so that the market approach can lie in. As I given the example of the mangrove, you cannot improve mangrove, you get it successful if people are hungry, are poor, if the environment is weak, even your seedlings will not prosper in the air. So you need to settle the basics, ensure that everyone is along, and then from there you can start doing the market. But market are necessary because the entering gate for the private sector, as we said. In the private sector, business is business, you should, but we need it to be much more sustainable, much more resilient. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luis. Would you pass the microphone to Mr. Deo Gabinete from the Asian Pacific NDC Partnership Office? It is clear that we need a much longer and much deeper going workshop to clarify how non-market approaches work. I hope we have touched at least the top of the iceberg and have triggered your curiosity and that you already have some ideas. Please, Theo, explain how the NDC partnership supports countries, those countries that do not want to be engaged only in carbon markets, but also in non-market approaches under Article 6.8, and also in international cooperation on adaptation, which is possible to hook in the Paris Agreement only under Article 6.8. Please.
Thanks, Lucy, for inviting us to also speak in this panel discussion. So, broadly speaking, the NDC partnership itself is one of those non-market approaches. The work that we do falls under Article 6.8. If you look at the broad definitions of how we work as a matchmaking entity. So essentially, we matchmake both technical and financial resources so that we will be able to deliver support to countries' needs, whether it has to do with emissions reductions, adapting to climate change, or even facilitating to climate finance. And we do this in a number of ways, and I can mention a few before I link it to how we see ABM as one of those innovative tools or innovative mechanisms that would hopefully increase the quality of the support that development partners that are members of the NDC partnership are already providing countries. So I said, first and foremost, we're a matchmaking platform. And that means we matchmake holistic and tailored support to countries. And the Asia Pacific and Eastern Europe region, which I manage, and definitely also in Mohammed's region in Africa, more than half of the countries that we serve who are members of the NDC partnership are LDCs and SIDS. So the support that we often receive as a request from them are related to adaptation or building internal capacities, so they would be able to not only surface or identify relevant projects for adaptation, but also enhance their capacities to sustain and implement this project. And this includes being able to attract financing as well. We also have recently launched what we call the NDC Navigator tool. There are specific sections and specific chapters in that tool where we have explicitly been encouraging countries to also look into how they would be able to integrate mainstream adaptation targets into their NDCs, especially in line with the global goal on adaptation. And recently, we've been also embarking on preparing investment plans and resource mobilization frameworks. And together with this, the leadership of the Asian Development Bank, the Adaptation Fund, and also the Commonwealth Secretariat, hopefully by December this year, or if not earlier next year, we'll be able to launch an adaptation investment plan and resource mobilization strategy that would be available for other countries, all developing countries, of course, to look into. This is not a non-prescriptive strategy, but would provide you the guidance, milestones, and also the necessary enabling frameworks that would allow you to identify, prioritize, and mobilize financing. In parallel, we're already working with many SIDS in developing adaptation investment pipelines. We have one currently ongoing in Maldives where they're looking at health-related aspects of adaptation and ensuring that there's safer and much more resilient coastal zone management planning in the different atoll islands in Maldives. And in Fiji, recently, we have been able to support them in developing a nature-based, 5-year nature-based strategy, a nature-based seawall strategy, together with the cooperation with New Zealand MFAT. These are just a couple of the work that's related to adaptation investment planning, but of course, every now and then, we also hold regional convenings where different countries as well as development partners can showcase their leadership and their work that they're doing on adaptation. And hopefully, countries here, present here today, would be able to join some of those regional convenings, and maybe it could also be used as a platform for ABM to further, communicate use this platform to communicate and wider reach the work that they're doing.
Thank you very much, Deo. We heard that the NDC partnership has plenty of tools and instruments and is launching new tools to help countries to prepare their next NDCs, but also to matchmake them with relevant support to implement NDCs. That non-market approaches such as Subaru, ABM, local, may get a place at their platform. So this is an action point for us. Now, we would like to invite the audience to ask questions to our panelists. We have about 10 minutes from our host to do that. Please go ahead. I see Mr. Giza in the audience, who used to chair cooperative approaches before Paris. Maybe you should start. I'm sure you have plenty of questions.
Thank you, Lucy. I came in a bit late, but it's I dare say that I started hearing about this particular mechanism back when we were still going at it as various approaches, right? So it's good to see how far it has come, and more importantly, how some have managed to pick up on the concept and found entities willing to test it out, right? I came in a bit late, but I hope the barrier had something to do with it. And I'll actually pick up your contact later to see if we can try it elsewhere. Barrier, right? Who presented the barrier? Yeah. So we'll need to. I didn't see the match, right? So maybe perhaps you could spend 15 more seconds talking about the linkage between the approach and the barrier. But if indeed that is an example of it being deployed, then I think we are heading down the right path finally, right?
Thank you.
Thanks.
We will take one more question from Guinea. Patrick from Uganda, please.
Thank you very much. Gareth, you say the ABM is ending December 24. Was that correct? And yeah, kindly explain that.
Just while Lucy, we wait for the moderator. So the pilot phase is due to end the end of next year. We're trying to raise a fund, the African Adaptation Benefit Fund. We are trying to get $30 to $50 million to sign purchase agreements for adaptation benefits to show how that promise of cash can then stimulate investment, like we did in the carbon markets in the early 2000s. That would be the last stage of the pilot phase, and then we hope by then we can move forward to full implementation.
Thank you, Gareth, for your information. Patrick Kibaya, he is leading a non-profit organization in Uganda, which is providing technology solutions to those who need them most. Thank you. Ms. Haruna, would you elaborate a little bit more on how Subaru helps private sector to overcome barriers to engaging in adaptation? To repeat, what barriers the private sector faces to engage in adaptation and how Subaru helps to overcome them, both from in the host country and for the Japanese technology providers. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the barriers I've been repeating is that the companies are SMEs and startups, so they have a few connections. They have the eager. I've been talking to these CEOs of the startups and the SMEs, and they have the eager and willingness to do business overseas, but they don't have the connections. They don't hear the needs. So that is why Subaru Initiative provides the solution for them by providing them a matchmaking with the local communities with the needs, and the Subaru Initiative covers the matchmaking and afterwards the demonstration phase. But after demonstration, we need to make it a business. We need to make a business model. But the Subaru Initiative doesn't cover the business side. But as METI, we promote. We also have been studying some kind of a adaptation benefit mechanism as well. So we believe that visualizing the adaptation effect, adaptation contribution also helps mobilize finance from the private financial institutions. So we're also we are also communicating with the Japanese financial institutions if they can provide how we can help them provide finance to the Japanese adaptation companies.
Thank you very much, Ms. Yoshizawa. We have a question from the scientific corner.
Hello, this is Shaukat Ali Baloch. I'm from Pakistan. I'm running one local NGO, but I'm also globally working closely with government of Balochistan Health Department, which I'm belonging that part of Pakistan which is badly suffering from climate change in terms of any means. My question is, because I'm a little bit late, it's open question for everyone can respond it. The question is that I have two type of question. It's a short question. One is in terms of the governance, particularly with the government, especially with the countries. So the governance is a big issue for the bringing the sustainable change. So the NDCs, especially the actors who are working on that, how to ensure the governance accountability of the government. The second question is linked with the non-actors of CSR. Basically, I'm a public health specialist, but I have a background with the some multi-sectorial. So I've been observed that say this non-actors are not addressing the real need of the communities, what the communities are facing. For example, I can give an example about my cities. We have a lot of industries. Like the health is a very critical area of that area, that area due to their, a lot of waste, due to the lot of things, the environment is becoming polluted and people are suffering from different kind of diseases. They are not, addressing the sustainable way of the health need, just doing one camps, medical camps, just come do a short activity and go back. So what the non-actors, how we can ensure the two non-actors to work on sustainable way to bring the sustainable, issues and address the sustainable issues of the area. Thank you.
Thank you. We will take one more question from the back before going to answers. Please present yourself.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is Xavier Gulele. I'm from Mozambique. I work for the disaster risk management. Thank you. My question is going to the first presenter. I hear from my colleague from Mozambique that this project, this initiative is already established in my country. In the main of the activities that is running there is about the droughts in main districts of the country. But we have a big problem, another big problem related to the floods, urban floods or flash floods. So, and we saw some examples here that the initiative took by Subaru about the flood solution to the seats. So this is a big problem for Mozambique. So how this initiative can extend from droughts to floods in Mozambique? Thank you.
Thank you. We heard two questions. The first was from the NGO in Pakistan, who was asking about about the governance of the non-market approaches, but I understood more how the non-market approaches cooperate with the government. What is the role of the host country government for these non-market approaches, and how an organization such as theirs can become involved or make use of the services that the non-market approach provides. Who would like to go first? I see Gareth.
All right. Well, mine is very quick and sweet. Pakistan
Dale.
launched last year the National Adaptation Plan. So one of the first and foremost advice I would say is that for any non-market approaches and for any climate adaptation action at all, make sure that it's firmly rooted and make sure that it's looking towards supporting or addressing the targets that the country have already set in the National Adaptation Plan. I understand, if I understand correctly, in the case of Pakistan, they are also trying to build capacities at the provincial level to ensure that there's proper coordination of the different climate actions that will be implemented at the ground level. There are provincial coordinators that are being put in place. I'm not sure if this is the case also in Balochistan, but definitely in some of the provinces there, there's ongoing work that's being carried out by, if I recall correctly, UNICEF.
Thank you, Gareth. Please address also the second question from Mozambique on how to scale up adaptation solutions, such as for flooding.
Thank you. Let me just start with the first questions from Pakistan on the governance issue. At least within the Adaptation Benefits Mechanism, we have a role for a host country letter of authorization or approval. And that's important because it acknowledges that the host country agrees that the project activity contributes towards the adaptation needs. And that's critical because it then opens a route to report the finance that's invested into the project under the Enhanced Transparency Framework as support given from a donor country and support received by a developing country. So there's a strong governance link there. And if the government doesn't agree that that this project is, contributes to adaptation, then it shouldn't be. It can still go ahead other instruments, but it wouldn't be part of the framework. But that's important in the context of the NCQG and trying to mobilize finance from new sources. And on the getting the non-actors, if I understood your question slightly differently, I think there's a strong angle into this through supply chains. You have many companies in the global north who source goods or services through supply chains. So just take, for example, a company that has, for example, a call center in a city in Asia. If their staff can't get to work, or they get to work and they're not in a condition to start doing their job, then their business is under threat. So investing in sustainable transport, green transport solutions, and investing in air conditioning in the office so that staff can work during a heat wave. These are important adaptation issues that actually already impact upon business activities in the global north. So supply chain issues, I think, are very interesting to explore, and they go right through, obviously, materials, agro-commodities, and so on, but enabling workers to get to work is important. And on the expanding from droughts to floods, well, we saw a great technology for dealing with flash floods, the slam dam, and I think Omar gave a good example of how you may be able to mobilize finance to purchase that equipment and have it installed and ready to deploy when you receive news of floods coming. Of course, you need early warning systems and so on in place for that, and these are many other areas. But I think the key to identifying these is through the NDC or the National Adaptation Plan to start identifying the specific requirements that you need so that they can be built into these negotiations and into the financing cost of the NDCs in the next round. If you don't put these activities into the NDCs, then they're not going to earmark money for them. So I would say that's the most important thing. I mean, I would like to see them in the national adaptation plans because this is adaptation, but the national adaptation plans are not as advanced as the NDCs. So make sure you put these activities into the NDCs and say, we need $10 million for this and $5 million for that, so that when it's added up, money can be earmarked.
Thank you very much, Gareth. We are called to stop this event, but I would like to give the final word to Ms. Haruna to explain in 2 sentences what is the role of the host country government, how do you engage them, and how can other organizations make use of your services. Please be very brief, and please stay a bit longer in front of the pavilion to engage with our speakers bilaterally after the event.
Okay, so reaching out to the host countries, I would like to thank the UNCDF because they are the ones who have the connections to the local communities. So if we don't have their cooperation, we cannot reach the government. So as collaboration with the UNCDF, UN organization is very effective for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, all of you, for attending this event. If you're interested in talking a little bit longer to one of our speakers, please let's go in front of the pavilion and exchange some information or contacts. Thank you very much to the NDC Partnership for hosting this event. It's our last event of the African Development Bank. We wish you all a successful COP.